Doctors change lives every day, but what happens when life changes yours? A single injury, a sudden illness. Your career, your income, your future can shift in an instant. The best physicians don't just plan for success, they protect it. At Set for Life Insurance, they believe financial security isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. True own occupation disability insurance ensures that no matter what happens, your future stays in your hands. Because protecting your income means protecting everything you've built. Visit drpodcastnetwork.co/set4life today. Secure your future before life makes the choice for you.
Not a good look for our profession.
How in the name of common sense did this ever get this far? Vaccines are not seek and destroy missions.
Because he was so severe.
This is nuts.
One of the top 20 things that she has discovered with her research company, Progenobiome, medicine has been corrupted. Where we go from here now, I don't know. Well, it doesn't work.
So angry. Punishable jail time.
Literally, this makes me believe we live in the Matrix.
Like, deadliest year in U.S. history.
It wasn't a question of if, but when.
This first red.
If it doesn't work and it's safe, put it in a little Fauci Pez dispenser, give it to the patient, and shut the family up.
It's going to get worse and worse and worse.
He gave Fauci an award for being a hero of the pandemic.
This has been a problem.
These were lies.
Let's talk about the healthcare professionals supporting this.
In the meantime, what was going on behind the scenes?
Irony of the whole thing is,
Harvey's 100% correct.
This is freaking annoying.
Ultimately, we need to have hope for America.
What is going on here? What has poisoned your mind? Buckle up, kids. All right, welcome back to BS Free MD. I am Dr. Tim Hindmarsh with my absolutely gorgeous, beautiful wife, Dr. May Hindmarsh. And what do we have today?
I thought you forgot my name there for a minute. Well, today we're thrilled to have with us Pete Evans on our show. Pete is an internationally renowned chef, restaurateur, author, and television presenter from Australia. Many of you might recognize him as a former judge if you watch the popular cooking show My Kitchen Rules. And beyond his television career, Pete has authored numerous cookbooks, and he's passionate and a great advocate for healthy eating. His latest endeavor is a children's cookbook titled Healthy Food for Healthy Kids that he co-authored with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and it offers over 120 paleo and keto-friendly recipes designed to keep our little ones happy and healthy. We'll put the link in for you in the show. And I
wonder if when you do like the Mix Master in Australia, if it turns the opposite direction.
We'll have to ask him that question.
Yeah, we will. All right, on to the show.
Well, Pete, thank you for joining us here on BS Free MD. We have not had a chef on the show, and I must say that we did a couple years ago do a giant series of segments on diet. We went deep into everything from healing through being a vegetarian, fascinating stories from a rheumatologist, to the complete carnivore diet, keto diet, and everything in between. We've had Sean Baker on. We haven't done the blood type diet. We've done everything. And so now it's wonderful to have you on the show. Of course, we want to hear what you're up to and your interest in promoting paleo and keto diet as well, being a chef. But first, let's start with just sharing with our audience, for those that, haven't followed you on TV or online. Share with us your journey. How did you become a chef? When did you want to become a chef? What inspired you to pursue this career?
Beautiful. Thank you for having me on your program, and g'day to everybody that's watching out there too, or listening. And this will be a beautiful conversation. But thank you for the question. So I came to the culinary arts as sort of the professional sort of the romantic term of what cooking is, and cooking's so simple. It really is. It's a list of ingredients, certain method, desired outcome. rinse and repeat. Everybody does it. Well, I hope everybody does it. And it's such a simple art and simple craft. And you can make it as complicated as you like. Like everything that we choose to do in life, we can make it really, really difficult, or we can create a skill where we develop, it's like working a muscle, where we become better and better and better and better at it. But the fundamentals behind cooking generally is some sort of heat, whether it be a grill or a stove or an oven, campfire, protein. If you are choosing to eat animals, as you just mentioned, we have so many different ways in which we can fuel our bodies. We're omnivores, so we can obviously eat both animals and plants. And so it's such a simple tool that I encourage everybody to develop an interest in if they want to have long-term regenerative health, unless if you're rich enough to have somebody like myself or others to cook for them. But most people aren't in that camp. So I think as a tool, it's vitally important that we get back into the kitchen. And we'll talk about ways in which and tips to do that for you. But to answer your question, sorry, I do go on these sort of convoluted rants sometimes. I became a chef because I wanted to move out of home and become independent. And I looked at all the different jobs that were available to me, and I didn't want to keep going to school when I finished high school. It wasn't for me. So I looked at electrician, builder, plumber, mechanic, butcher, hairdresser, all of these wonderful tools or jobs that we can develop in our life. And cooking just ticked more boxes for me than any of the other ones for my personal interests. I wanted to be able to work at night so I could surf in the day. I thought if I learned to cook, I'd be able to travel the world and get a job anywhere, because even back then I knew that cooking was probably, and learning to be a chef, it would never be outsourced from computers or robots or AI in the future. And I still hold on to that view as well, because it is such a, as I said, it's a beautiful craft and art. So I never had a passion for cooking. That came when I worked with some really inspiring chefs through my career. And lo and behold, I ended up opening my own restaurants with my family, and ended up being on television teaching people how to cook for 2 decades. And I've penned 30 different cookbooks over my time that have become bestsellers here in Australia. So I became what's known as a celebrity chef, which is just a well-known person that is a chef that teaches people how to cook. And I'm humbled and honored to have that title. And it's been a wonderful journey. And I started to explore nutritional dietary principles about 15 years ago, which really kicked off the information that I was sharing. I created a documentary called The Magic Pill, which ended up on Netflix globally. And I also produced 2 series, 8 episodes, each of these series, half-hour episodes of a cooking show called The Paleo Way, which got distributed in different parts of the world, which sort of probably was ahead of its time. Looking back when I released that about 10 years ago, because everywhere that I sent it, they go, well, it doesn't really fit into a genre that exists. It's a cooking show, but it's not a cooking show because you're talking about health. I said, yeah, I'd like to create a new genre for what cooking shows can be, instead of just bake your cake or reality TV shows. Let's actually teach people not only how to cook, but why to cook certain ingredients. And we can talk about that a little later on. But that's my story. I love cooking now. I'm 51 years of age. I've been cooking professionally over 3.5 decades. And I love cooking more now than I ever have. And because there's something deeply primal about, and deeply self-nourishing and self-loving, to be able to cook yourself a beautiful meal, however complicated or simple you choose it to be, and knowing where the ingredients come from, and, just taking the time. It could be 10 minutes to create a dish, or it could take 8 hours. Or 2 days ago, I cooked a brisket, which took 12 hours in the smoker. But the preparation to cook that brisket was no more than 5 minutes. So it's 5 minutes of work, some time for it to do its thing. And I've been eating brisket for the last 2 days because it's a huge piece of meat. And you, when you think about it like that, it's like 5 minutes of work to have meat for the next 2 or 3 days. I've still got a big chunk of it that I'm going to eat today, my wife and I. And so it can be as simple as you like, as I'm going on this path here. It is so simple. It is so delicious. It's such a gift that we can give to ourselves and to others as well. And so that's my little story.
I love it.
I think it's kind of this lost art, because we hear a lot about, well, it's very expensive to eat clean or to eat healthy. And I think a lot of it is, if you compare, how much time and how much money it costs you to cook that brisket, that's going to give you at least 3 days, if not more, of protein. And you compare that to some of the poorest people that I've worked with that get, Uber Eats every single day of fast food. And I'm like, you are way ahead financially doing what you did, but and nutritionally you're hitting it out of the park, and also it's going to taste way better. And so pushing people kind of back into the kitchen, I think, is just unbelievably important. We think it's easier to do the fast food thing, but really when you think of it, like we think of what we had last night, which was fantastic, and it was really very easy. You grill some meat. Meanwhile, May and we had friends over, they're doing the other side dishes, and it was, 20 minutes and we're eating, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, it is. I believe so many of our current problems in the world could be so quickly remedied if everybody just chose consciously what they put into their shopping carts and then cooking for themselves. As you know, I heard a statistic the other day. I used to say 80% of chronic illness is created from our lifestyle choices. And I honestly believe the biggest percentage of our lifestyle choices is our diet. Many people will have you believe that it's getting fit and going to the gym or running a marathon or doing these endurance sports or heavy lifting, this, that, and the other. Whereas I honestly believe if we change our diet, that'll give us the energy to not torture ourselves in the gym, and for us to have the energy and vitality to do the things that bring us joy, moving our bodies in a way that brings us joy instead of feeling like it's a chore or something we must do. Because once we have energy and vitality, which we can get through fueling our body with the correct foods, and the correct foods, even that sounds a bit clinical, just real food, meat, seafood, fruit and veg, nuts, seeds, eggs, if you can tolerate them, dairy, if you can tolerate it, from beautiful sources that haven't been poisoned or that haven't been grown in a way or raised in a way or caught in a way that has denatured the product or added extra stresses, fertilizers, chemicals, vaccines into products or meat and so on. Antibiotics into fish food, these types of things. If we choose consciously, we're ridding ourselves from external toxins. And as you said, it can be, I want to be careful with my words here because everybody is unique. Some people are rich, some people are really doing it tough. So there's a spectrum there in which we can choose to fuel ourselves. And we can eat healthy on a budget. 100% we can. You can actually save money eating this way if you change your philosophy or your belief systems about what you deem as good food for yourself, and that you can learn to appreciate. What I'm talking about is offal or organ meats is one of these things. Most people, I won't say most people, but there seems to be an aversion to that because it's icky or it's yucky or I don't like that, so I'm never going to eat that. But as a chef, that was one of the fussiest people on the face of the planet, that now those foods are my favorite foods. We can train ourselves through not only belief, but understanding how these foods can taste great, because every single culture on the face of the planet has learnt through their geographic location and the ingredients available to them and their cooking techniques, and through the passage of time, how to make these foods taste absolutely delicious, which you see in restaurants all around the world. They are using, and chefs love to use, the organ meats and offal. I'm just using that as an example. I'm not saying we need to eat organ meats every single day of the year, but they're definitely cheaper than eye fillet, for instance, or filet steak. They're cheaper than shellfish. And we eat a lot of ground meat or mincemeat at our home as well, whether it be free-range pork mince, chicken mince, lamb mince, beef mince, game mince. The dogs love it. The birds that we feed love it. We love it. And you could do so much with it. That's where sort of the culinary arts come into play. All the different preparations you can do with meat that's been ground up. Again, every single culture uses these types of meats in recipes because, number one, it has so much flavor, especially if you're getting the full fat ground beef or the ground chicken or ground pork or ground lamb or bison or whatever it may be. Burger patties, sausages, rissoles, curries, Mexican mince or ground beef recipes, and the list goes on and on and on and on. Pie mixes, shepherd's pie, cottage pies, if you're familiar with English cooking recipes. So you can do it cheap. And then the beautiful part about this is when you change your diet, you don't need to eat as often, most people, and as much. Because the reason people overeat, in my experience, is because they're not getting the nourishment into their body. It's like they're running their body vehicle on the wrong fuel. And when our bodies aren't getting the nourishment, the nutrients, the vitamins, the minerals from their diet, the body is responding, saying, "Hey, I'm still hungry. You haven't given me the fuel," which is why people overeat. Whereas, for instance, my wife and I, we eat once to twice a day. And sometimes we'll fast for a whole day as well. And we don't die. And that is a really good way of saving some money, is by cutting down your food intake. And it's not like you wither away to nothing. I surf 2 hours a day most days, or in the garden doing work, doing all of these things, still producing content. I have more vitality now than I ever had on a standard Australian or a standard American diet. So it can be budget friendly. And at the same time, if you do have money to spend, disposable income, you can extend that into some of these more expensive types of foods if you choose to. You know, I don't want everybody just eating mince and sardines and the fish that does taste does have a strong flavor, even though it's really good for us. You know, I think a varied diet is what we're here to experience if we are healthy. You know, and we can talk about carnivore and plant-based and these types of things and why they've created such a movement over the years, if you choose to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think, it's fascinating. It really hit me the other day because, especially with RFK, and we know that your last book you wrote with him, the food dyes, there's a million different things that we need to try to deal with. And, should we be regulating things more, all of these debates. But it really hit me at work the other day because one of our staff brought in these double stuffed Oreos. And I looked at the nutritional information, and 2 double stuffed Oreos is 140 calories. But it's not just 140 calories. It's 140 calories essentially of nothing but highly refined carbohydrates and sugar. And you look at that and you go, if you burn, if you're 150 to 190 pounds, you're going to burn about 100 calories a mile walking. And so you would have to walk for half an hour to burn off those 2 Oreos. So as much as we get lost in the debate of what's good for you and what's the best diet and all this, we've got to start with the math. And the math is, if you eat 2 Oreos at 140 calories, you're going to be hungry right away because you're going to get an insulin spike and it's going to trigger hunger. And then you're going to keep eating because we have, in these standard American, Australian, whatever diets, we're calorie rich and nutrient poor. And that's really what it comes down to. Whereas if you eat 140 calories of steak, you're not going to be hungry. I mean, that's what so much of this comes down to. And people say, what's the best diet? And I'm like, the one that works. And no diet for weight loss is going to work unless you ramp up fat and protein and limit carbs, because that's what works the best for humans to not be hungry. And if you don't address hunger, it never gets better. If Ozempic has taught us anything, it's taught us that if you're not hungry, you lose weight.
Yeah. And I'm very cautious. Again, just like you said, what is the best diet? You know, when I created the documentary, The Magic Pill, about 10 years ago, there was a point during there I was like, what the hell am I doing? I'm making a documentary teaching people the foods to eat. And there's a statement that really is quite alarming that I heard years ago, many years ago. It's like, apparently we're the most intelligent species on the planet, maybe apart from dolphins. And we are the one species that doesn't know what to eat intuitively, instinctively, whereas I live on a couple of 100 acres and we have beautiful native wildlife around us. And I'll just use the birds as an example. Over the last however many years living on the land, we've witnessed so many cycles of new birds being born, hatching out of their eggs and becoming part of the community of wildlife in our area. They're not reading textbooks about what to eat. Every wild animal on the face of the planet knows what to eat for its species. And human beings, for some reason, we've lost that intelligence, body intelligence, inner wisdom, instinct, intuition about what to eat. And it's always troubled me that how have we lost that? Whereas our ancient ancestors, whether it be our great-great-great-grandparents, they never had these people telling them what they should be eating, because they ate what was local, what was off the land or out of the waterways. And it worked. It was so simple. And again, I'm going back to that simple philosophy. It doesn't need to be complicated. It really doesn't need to be complicated. And as I said before, we're omnivores. We were once hunter-gatherers, and then we developed agriculture, depending on your belief system on how long we've been here on this face of the planet, whether we have evolved or whether we were put here by the aliens or whether God put us here however many thousands of years ago. For me, it's irrelevant what your belief is, but during a lot of our period of time on Earth, we were just sourcing things locally that we would hunt or gather. I mean, I don't think there's any debate there. So how do we mimic that in the 21st century? We look for really good quality meat, as close to as natural as possible, as natural as possible. And it just makes sense. We look for things that are seasonal, that haven't been sprayed. And we don't gorge ourselves on bananas every single day of the year, because none of our ancestors would have eaten a banana every single day of the year, or a kiwi fruit, or a blueberry smoothie every single freaking day of the year, because we never would have had access to these things. And the amount of products that are out there from influencers in the wellness space. Have your green drink every day. Have your blueberry smoothie every day. Make sure you're eating a kilogram of kale a day. It just never would have happened. What would have provided us is, again, what was local, what was seasonal, what was spray-free. Everything was organic 100 years ago. And we probably would have gone through, in some periods of our evolutionary history, periods of feast and famine. So fasting is part of us enjoying food with our community, with our tribe, with our family, with our neighbors, is part of our DNA as well. So eating by ourselves is probably okay, but eating with others is probably better sitting around a campfire as often as we can, or sitting around a table sharing stories, is what food to me really, really is about. And I've got two daughters, they're 18 and 20 years old. And I've never had a meal with them where we didn't sit down together for a family meal, whether it was breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or whatever meal. It wasn't they were going to their rooms to eat in front of the television or anything like that, because the connection that we can get from sharing a meal is so profound and so heart-opening, which I honestly believe is another one of these tools for long-term regenerative health. You can eat all the organic, paleo, keto, carnivore, plant-based, whatever dietary principle that you choose to believe in, to follow. Yet if you have a job that you dislike immensely, or you have a relationship that you're in, either with yourself or with your partner or with your family, and that creates stress in your body or dis-ease in your body, cancer, autoimmune disease, the list goes on, may develop even if you are eating well. I'm not saying that food is the be-all and end-all. Like I said before, 80% of chronic illness can, I believe, be prevented and alleviated and potentially reversed through changing of diet. It's just one of the tools that we have access to. And I would never go all in on food and not look at the water that we have, not look at the amount of time that we spend connecting to each other, or spending time in nature, or understanding how nature works on our biology, or dismissing our emotional belief systems, which then create the sabotage mindset of changing the way that we eat, or creating that disease, potential disease environment from having emotional imbalances or emotional traumas that haven't been resolved. But I honestly believe food is probably the easiest one of these to change, because some of these deeper emotional beliefs and patterns that may be causing disharmony in the body and mind and spirit can be a little bit trickier to tackle. So once we have the vitality, I believe those other things that may be out of balance in our bodies for long-term regenerative health can be more easily addressed, and the adventure can begin with a lot more energy than somebody that's suffering and lethargic and bedbound and doesn't want to get up and do anything. So there's another little side story for you.
No, I love what you said about choosing, your food and not always eating the exact same thing, because we were never meant to do that. And generations ago, which I so miss, even though I hadn't lived there, but even I'm thinking back to my childhood when food was so different. But I can imagine 3 to 500 years ago, when there was not all that crops sprayed with chemicals and it was more organic. And you're right, it was based on the seasons, and people were more likely to go to their neighbors if they weren't farmers that had cows and trade, etc. And it was pretty simple based. And now, we used to say the easiest way to eat is to shop the aisle of the outside aisle of the grocery store, because that was the fruit, vegetable, the meat section in the back, and maybe the healthy greens.
Dairy.
A little dairy. Skip all the processed food in the middle, the man-made created stuff that's loaded with chemicals and sugars. But I never really thought so much in terms of eating more seasonally. I mean, for sure, trying to pick things that haven't been sprayed or doused with chemicals. But to your point about, not eating a banana every day. And so, there's so many people that say, this is what works for me, and I eat the same thing every day, and it's great for my health. And that might be the case. But I think for a lot of people, you need variability, and it probably impacts our health more than we realize. What do you think of that?
America spends more on healthcare than any other country, yet we rank 48th in life expectancy. We spend trillions, but 200,000 insured people still declare medical bankruptcy every year. Clearly, the system is broken. But what if there was a way to take back control, to break free from inflated costs and red tape? That's exactly why Crowd Health was created, a smarter, more transparent way to pay for healthcare. No middleman, no bureaucracy. Just a community of people helping each other when it matters most. Join the revolution. Go to joincrowdhealth.com and use promo code BSFREE for a discount on your first 3 months. Because your health should be in your hands, not theirs.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating thing. I mean, I've delved into this for quite some time, a decade and a half now, and I've seen paleo was the one that really resonated to me because it seemed to be the most common sense out of everything. 30 years ago, I tried vegan or vegetarian for 4 years, and it was a very humbling experience because I was a late teenager. My health wasn't great, and I adopted a vegan diet for 4 years. And I felt great for the first year, and then I went steadily downhill to the point where I was worse than I was on a standard Australian diet. It was bizarre, but I had this belief that I was doing the right thing. And I'm not dismissing veganism or vegetarianism. It didn't work for me, and it hasn't worked for a lot of people. And what I found really fascinating about paleo, and paleo just means old. That's really, if you can get over the word paleo and just think whenever you hear the word paleo, it just means the old way, you know? I know, I like that. And many of the people that were in the paleo movement that I was reading their books and interviewing them, they also had been vegan and vegetarian once upon a time in their life, and they'd gone through the same sort of ups and downs that I experienced. And so there was something that seemed to work in the paleo movement, which is the best sourced meat, seafood, fruit, veg, nuts, seeds, eggs, dairy, if you can tolerate it, raw dairy. That sort of covered a lot of bases. And then I discovered people with autoimmune disease were doing something else. They were doing what's called autoimmune paleo, because what they worked out, Dr. Terry Walls and others, they worked out that certain plant-based foods and eggs and nuts and seeds and nightshades were causing the inflammation in their bodies to keep recurring. And I thought, this is fascinating. So there's paleo, which removes pretty much legumes, modern dairy, and grains. They've taken it to the next step because they needed that extra strictness, if you want to call it that word, strictness, into their diet. And then a few years later, I met people like Sean Baker, who you mentioned earlier, and Michaela Peterson and Paul Saladino and others that were talking about the carnivore diet and how that had helped them. I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Meat-based only, and really, really strict on what they can consume. And they seem to be doing fine on many, many years of this. So where I land on all of this is, I believe, again, I'll say it again, we're omnivores. People can debate that, but it seems to be the definition in the dictionary of what a human being is, you know. And I think it for people to choose what dietary philosophy, and even that sounds a little weird to say, but what foods they should consume, I think it comes down to an individual's point on their health journey. If you have autoimmune disease or major health issues, I would probably, at this point in my journey, suggest an autoimmune paleo / carnivore approach for a period of time, depending on what that health issue is. Because it seems that these people that thrive or get better on these approaches, it's because so many of the modern day foods that most of us should be able to eat, and I don't use the word should very often, but most of us should be able to eat as omnivores, are causing problems probably in their gut lining or gut that is causing the inflammation. And our bodies are always wanting to heal. I'm sure you've heard that and know that and speak that language. I am a firm believer our bodies know exactly what they're doing all the time and want us to heal. Unfortunately, when we are putting in ingredients or putting on products onto our skin, or again, creating the same emotional belief patterns and experiences because we haven't worked out how to resolve those issues in our life, that's another form of inflammation for our bodies. If we keep putting in the stimulus or the data that causes the inflammation, our bodies are really fighting an uphill battle to get into that homeostasis or healing pattern. So if we remove the inflammation, whatever that may be, it could be doom scrolling on your Instagram if you're following the truth movement, that the world is ending and everybody's out to jab us and get us, that can cause inflammation. If we're watching mainstream news, that can cause us emotional and probably spiritual inflammation. If we're eating processed foods, that can cause us inflammation in our bodies. And for some of these people, I think they just need a break from the foods that are considered somewhat healthy in many books, which is why people seem to thrive on carnivore. Now, whether you can go carnivore for the rest of your life without any issues, I don't know. Because the one thing that I've heard, and I do probably believe, is the most non-inflammatory foods on the face of the planet is meat and seafood. And they seem to contain most of the nutrients, if not all of the nutrients and minerals that we need to thrive. As the medical textbooks, from what my understanding is, there's no such thing as an essential carbohydrate. There's only essential fats and proteins. That sort of sums up the carnivore approach.
Right.
One statement there, to a degree, based on your philosophy on this or your belief system. And then if we look at the work of people like Joe Dispenza or the biology of belief, what's his name? Wow, it's only 5:30 in the morning here. Biology of Belief by Bill Lipton.
Okay.
Our beliefs override, our beliefs can change the reality of our experience.
Mm-hmm.
We can go into a remission for stage 4 cancer through our belief systems, without even changing our diet. We hear of these remarkable and miraculous stories by people changing their belief systems. So if you're a firm believer that the carnivore diet is the healthiest way to eat, there's probably a good chance, if you 100% believe that you will live a great, long, healthy life. If somebody has doubt about if the carnivore diet can sustain them for the rest of their life, that person, because they don't have that 100% belief in what that is, perhaps will get to experience the question mark because they have the doubt. Generally, when we have a question over something, we have doubt in something. It's not we're in 100%. And curiosity or doubt can be a wonderful, wonderful tool in this day and age. But generally, when we have a doubt about something, whether it be anything in our lives, we'll be given the opportunity to really go down the adventure to define and to work out why we have a doubt in that area, whatever area it is in our life. I'm going more into human experiences here. But I believe the carnivore diets can work because it gives our guts a break from so many different foods so that it can just focus on digesting meat and or seafood and using that for a period of time to do what it needs to do, which is to heal. I have to say, these days, I'm probably 90% carnivore myself. I love just getting some really good quality meat and seafood, and sometimes we'll just eat a carnivorous meal, whether it be once a week, twice a week, 10 times a week, or we'll add some fresh herbs or a dressing or a sauce or some mayonnaise. And then we will just source whatever fruit and vegetables are local to us at the farmer's market that are in season, or that we grow in our pot plants or in our garden. So that seems to work for myself and my wife a lot more than filling our plates with vegetables, which is how I started on this journey. Paleo for me at one point in time was a lot of vegetables, small amount of meat, or a lot of vegetables or salad, small amount of seafood. And that has changed over the last 15 years for me, where it's more meat, more seafood, small amount. And I see the fruits and vegetables as more as a supplement from time to time that tastes good, that have obviously wonderful benefits to it, but I'm not fanatical about filling my plate with fruits and vegetables, because my body at this point in time seems to work better on less veggies and more meat and more seafood. But I'm flexible that I can change my way of eating at any point in time, because I never want to become rigid and believe that I have it all worked out. And I think that's I'll finish with that. Being flexible, because when we're flexible, we can, if we do not have the flexibility in our life to change our minds or our beliefs, then we can get bent out of shape, right? And it's been some humbling experiences in my time where I have been too rigid in a belief or a philosophy. And again, I've had the opportunity to explore that, because life brings you these opportunities for you to look at it and go, you sure you want to be rigid in this experience? Or have you got some wriggle room to be a little bit more flexible? And so I'll leave it at that.
Well, yeah, and that's always been my problem with really strict anything, because if you're telling me, a human being 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago didn't pick olives or oranges or apples off of a tree, which, the apple's doesn't have tusks or fangs, it's not going to kill you. And it tastes good. It's sweet. It's super palatable. It's easy to acquire. Of course we did that. There's no question we did that. Also, we grew up in the prairies of Canada. The natives chased buffalo. Buffalo were unbelievably valuable. You could eat for literally weeks because of the way they could preserve the meat. You had hides. You had, clothing you could make out of them. All of this stuff that is just so obvious. And my new, our show's BS Free MD. And so my new kind of mantra is the best science in the world is science that doesn't contradict common sense. It's just. And so I think I agree with Sean Baker. I think that the carnivore diet is really great as a treatment modality. And that's the only thing he really is pushing. He's like, this is an amazing treatment modality because I've used it as a treatment modality for lots of people. They've gotten healthier. They've lost weight. Their mind gets clearer, all of these things. He says it over and over again. I'm not advocating this for everyone all the time because I don't have the data to say that. All the data I have is the patients I've treated and what it's done for me. That's it. That is an honest broker. But in this wellness space, there is so much bullshit that it's it's so difficult for people. I'm like, your ancestors didn't eat $500 a month of supplements. They didn't. My grandparents grew tons of their own food. They ate tons of carbs, tons of cream and all the they were Eastern European. And they were heavy. They weren't, they weren't fat, but they were big, strong people. Grandpa was 98 when he passed away. My grandmother was living independently at 91 and slipped and fell and died. So, you show their diet to somebody like, Paul Saladino or Anthony Chafee, and you just their heads would explode.
And going back to what I said, and they probably lived wonderful lives. And I don't like to assume on anybody. The less stress that we could have in our lives, the better, right? emotional, spiritual, whatever, however far down the rabbit hole you want to go in this. And as you said, common sense with everything, the common sense diet or the rule book to life, not everybody's unique. Everybody has their own challenges and journeys and celebrations and loves and heartbreak and separation and death and birth. And, we're here to experience it all. It's how we react to these experiences, whether we hold on to that emotional pain for the rest of our lives and become the victim, and that then becomes our identity. So whenever we tell our story to somebody else, we define ourselves by our past. And I see that so often. I see it so often, fucking excuse my language, but on social media, it's the one thing that's really prevalent at the moment from my observation is in the wellness space. For some reason, people like to tell their victim story over and over and over and over and over and over again, and it seems to attract the victim mentality to them.
Yep.
It's this circle. I'm like, can you not see what you're doing? You're just inviting more and more of the victim identity. And once you understand what the victim mentality or identity does to somebody, it creates dis-ease. And when you start to get off on that, eroticize your victimhood because you've put it to your identity, and then people are responding to that. So they're getting the likes and the comments and the poor me and the this, that, and the other. You're creating this cycle, this very, very deep cycle that not only for yourself can cause disease, but you're nearly encouraging others to stay in this very disempowering state. And if one thing I've noticed, because it's mirroring what's happened in mainstream, the mainstream, I guess, narrative is celebrating victims of all sorts. The way we celebrate mental illness these days, the way we celebrate people being obese and overweight, the celebration of tragedy. And I'm not wanting to be harsh here, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. Where are the stories in the mainstream media of the celebration of people living a long life, being like your grandparents, being healthy? Like,
yes.
The question should be, you're healthy. What are you doing? Instead of, you're in pain. Let's keep sharing that pain story for other people to not feel so shitty about their pain story. And from working in the television, I was on television here in Australia for 20 years. The most startling conversation I had with one of the TV executives, because I said, why don't we create a TV program like I've just done for Netflix and self-produced? Why don't we do that for mainstream Australia? We show people how to shop, how to cook, without being dogmatic, and take people on a 10-week journey to show how their, if you want to use science, how their blood levels and inflammatory markers and reduce in a very short period of time. That we can reverse type 2 diabetes, put autoimmune disease in remission, change people's behavior just through connecting to nature and eating well. They said, Pete, you got to understand, mainstream television, people do not want to see people that are doing things that they do not want to do, that they're too scared to do, that will make them feel worse about their life. Our job is to create train crash television so that the people sitting at home that are miserable with their lives can look at the screen and see more fucked up individuals in a more miserable state, so they can feel better about their miserable life sitting at home. Excuse my language there. I'm an Australian chef. It comes from the territory. And
I understand.
I was like, wow, okay, I get it. I see it. I'll never forget that. Which is why we do not have many of these inspiring genre-type lifestyle healthy cooking shows, and why there's such a resurgence at the moment or a fascination about this victim mentality story infiltrating the wellness space. Instead of the beautiful, uplifting stories. Get in the cook if you want.
Yeah,
Get in the kitchen.
Oh,
Cook. Self-love,
yeah,
self-nourishment.
to
Break
your
the
point,
spell.
you can be eating healthy and all the right things, but you're right. I mean, if you're surrounding yourself with that negative space, doom scrolling, poor attitude, I mean, the mental, spiritual aspects of that are going to override the healing that your body wants to do, despite the fact that you're putting in some high quality nutrients. I mean, that's what we believe. I mean, on our show, we always touch on all the things, not just the medical science and the physical, but the emotional, spiritual aspects are so key, that I really like what you're saying too, that, obviously the food that you put in your body is, what's going to give you the vitality in life, but spirituality and the mental part is just as important.
But you know what? It's vitality for what? It's longevity for what? Like when I started running, I did it because I needed self-discipline so I could study, so I could get into medical school. And then I realized I could water ski and downhill ski better if I was fitter. So then I was passionate about it, and then it kind of became its own thing. But the stuff that really made me feel alive was skiing. That was it. Now it's kiteboarding and still skiing, and until I have no knees, and then it'll be something else. But that's the point. Like we have a saying, RBS Free MD, kind of 4 tips for life is it's called we have 4 F's to give. And it's faith, family, finances, and fun. And you have to have all 4 of those things, and you have to have them in the correct order and in the correct balance. And if you don't, if it's all fun, you're going to burn up all the finances, and you're not going to have much of a family, and your faith is probably going to suffer. So you have to, it starts there. And we talk about, like, we have a very profound Christian faith. That's us. But everyone has faith. Everyone believes in something. And you have to start there and examine that. It's, what do I believe? You could live for 150 years. And if you're miserable and a victim, you have a crap life. Or you could be Joan of Arc, burned at the stake at 19, and actually live for something bigger than yourself. Like, one person's a hero. The other person is this selfish bastard that lived for a long time that no one looks up to. And I mean, I get really exercised about this because, again, who cares about longevity? Who cares about vitality if it's vitality for nothing? Mm-hmm. If you're not giving back to other people, if you're not out there shredding every single day till you're 80 years old, because being in the ocean is so powerful for like a spiritual connection to you and the earth and God. And most people, they just live these empty lives, and the doom scrolling is just these tiny little heroin dopamine hits that's just enough to get you through the day. And that's not life.
No, it's we're all unique. I don't believe we have a purpose per se. I believe purpose to me is to express our creativity, express our gifts, our talents, and we can develop these as well. If you do not know what your talent or gift is, be curious. Put the big question mark in. I might try ballroom dancing or gardening or, as you said, kiteboarding or this, that, and the other. Just be curious, because that's what we were like when we were children and toddlers. We were so curious about the world, and as a parent, and I had this wonderful conversation with my daughters around the table the other night, and we had some beautiful slow-cooked lamb with some vegetables. It was just a special night. My oldest daughter had a boyfriend there, and he's a professional rugby player. He plays for Australia. And we had their grandmother from their mother's side, and she's 91 years or 92 years of age from Austria. So I cooked dinner for the whole family, 3 generations. And we had this wonderful conversation about raising children. And all the experiences that myself and their mother had taught my daughters since they were born. Surfing, skiing, wakeboarding, gymnastics, tennis. The list went on and on. 10-pin bowling, darts, pool playing. The list went on. And every minute, somebody brought up a new activity and experience. Soccer, horse riding, rock climbing. And we had this wonderful conversation about, as children and as parents, the last thing I want to do is turn you into little versions of me, because that's a huge trap that I've seen people really can struggle with. You know, you're going to go into the same practice or the same profession as your father or your mother, or you've got to go to the same school because this. You know, there can be major rebellion and major identity crisis from that for some people, not all the people. I'm not dissing it. And I said, as a parent, I want to do for you to experience as many different things as possible. And I never knew which ones would stick, especially having two daughters. Yeah, give you the playground to experience as many different things and see which ones resonate the most for you, you know. And I said I was selfish in some of these things because I wanted you to experience the things that brought me joy. I love playing tennis. I love surfing. I love skiing. I love wakeboarding. I like skateboarding. I like horse riding. I like all of these things. And hopefully one of those will stick so that we can do that when I'm 90 and you're 70, we can go for a surf or a ski still or whatever it may be, 10-pin bowling. Yeah. So going back to my thing, our purpose is to express, in my opinion, to express our creativity and our passions and our gifts. And my daughters are wonderful artists. And if we can do the things that bring us joy, whatever they are, it doesn't have to be one thing. It can be one thing. It can be multiple things. And do them as often as we can. We're going to be so fulfilled. We fill our cup. Like I go for a surf most days. I fill my cup in the morning. It's overflowing already by 8 o'clock in the morning. Everything else is just cream on top, so to speak. Mm-hmm. You know? And that's for me because that is one of my medicines. I know if I go for a surf, I'm enlivened, I'm happy, I've got a smile from ear to ear. For somebody else, it could be meditating in the morning. It could be tending the garden. It could be calling their sister on the phone. You know, it doesn't have to be a physical activity. Somebody else, it could be cooking breakfast for themselves, you know, making a pot of tea. Find the things that bring you joy and do them as often as you can, you know, without any expectation, but without any guilt. This is where the penny drops for a lot of people.
Right.
My wife and I run a health retreat for the last 4 years where strangers come and stay with us that become friends. And one of the things I see in with our guests, they do things for other people and put themselves last. To be a good person in society, to be a good person with purpose, they put themselves last. And guess what happens?
They're miserable.
They can suffer disharmony, ill health.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying be selfish with all of your actions, but, you know, there comes a time of common sense to look after oneself so that then if you choose to, you can look after other people. If you just look after other people all the frickin' time and put yourself on the back burner, you know, that's for you to experience and potentially go through that adventure of why that might not be a healthy approach to your life long term. You know, and I don't like to generalize, but it's just something that I witness and observe and say, wow, you know, where are you finding the time in your day or your week to really self-love and self-nourish yourself? You know, because people feel so guilty about pleasuring themselves. You know, I'm not talking erotically, although potentially that could be where their blockage is because of their culture or their beliefs or whatever it is, you know.
I always have a blockage. 100% of the time.
I'll finish this. My wife always says, we're here for fun. That's our purpose. We're here for funsies. Look at where we've landed in this reality. Look at the nature. We have the ocean, we have the mountains, we have seasons where we get snow. We have so much fun available to us and play and adventure, and then look at food. How delicious Why do we have a palate? Why do we have nostrils to smell? Why do we have ears to listen to music? Why do we have eyes to see the beauty? Why do we have touch receptors that light up our brain when we touch our child, like holding our baby's hand or holding our child's hands when we cross the road? Like, how much joy does that give you, Or our loved ones, our partner, the touch of our elderly parent, giving them a hug. We have these, we're here for sensory exploration and sensory pleasure, and I don't mean that in a rude, erotic way. We're just here to experience everything that we can experience, the highs, the lows, the love, the connection, the separation. That's what we're here to experience. That's our purpose. And then how do we deal with these highs and potentially traumas in our life? We're all going to experience them. There's no escaping that. And, can we do it with grace? Can we do it with fluidity?
No, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but I know we're running low on time and we've got to get to your latest book because it's close to our heart. It's about keeping kids healthy. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough. It's my 31st book. Came out with Children's Health Defense, Healthy Food for Healthy Kids. And I asked Bobby Kennedy, I said, I've got this idea. Do you think Children's Health Defense would be interested in doing a cookbook with me? And he connected the dots for us, joined us to Children's Health Defense, and then joined us to Tony Lyons at Skyhorse Publishing. A year later, we have a book out, which just got released a couple of months ago. I think it's available on Amazon and other booksellers that will stock Children's Health Defense books. But it's great. 120 recipes, omnivorous, meat, seafood, fruit, veg. It's gluten-free. You can add your noodles or your bread if you choose to, if that's up to you. It's dairy-free because a lot of, I guess the families that follow Children's Health Defense have vaccine-injured children or children on the autism spectrum. And from my research through doctors, they seem to respond better for a period of time with no gluten dairy, depending on what type of dairy that is and what type of gluten, obviously, or grains. So just as a blanket cookbook, we've removed them. But if you want to add them into the recipes, feel free to. And just simple recipes to get people back into the kitchen and to make food delicious. I think that's one of our superpowers as chefs, is to share our experience and wisdom from cooking a million meals in professional kitchens, how to make them delicious without making them toxic, and if I can share a little bit of that wisdom through some cookbooks or through the photos that I share on Instagram of the meals that my wife and I and family share, then that is, I'm humbled by that and grateful that I get to share some of that experience and wisdom, because nobody wants to eat bland food.
And kids can be the most pickiest eaters. And so do you do anything to address that in your book at all? Or do you just describe to the fact that if you keep throwing it on their plate 5 or 10 times, they'll want to eat it?
We will survive. We have a survival mechanism in us. And, like children are like pets as well, and I don't mean that to be really a weird statement and to get a headline, but, some people will only feed their pets dried food, which is full of crap, and if they offer them real food, raw meat, for instance, which is healthier for them because they're carnivorous, they'll be fussy. They'll only be fussy for a period of time until the hunger really steps in. Okay. Same thing with children. And we featured that on our documentary, The Magic Pill. We took it. We followed a family that changed their diet, and the child refused to eat for a day or two, and then all of a sudden, okay, yeah. I want to survive. I want to survive. Right? Survival kicks in, and then they flourished on the new nutrient-dense food that tasted good. So. I'm not telling people to starve their child or deprive them. Right. There's just some delicious recipes that you can keep encouraging and right. inviting the adventure. Yeah,
I think our son would have only eaten pancakes with peanut butter and bacon for the rest of his life, but somehow he managed to turn out to be an ultra an ultra
my
marathoner and an Ironman
and a chef to boot too.
Yeah, and then you got into the cooking thing, and man, I love it when he comes to visit. We just go to the store. We just write the checks and sit there and wait. It's awesome.
I think it's right.
There's hope for these kids that just eat peanut butter, cheese sandwiches, and bacon, that they can become gourmet chefs.
Well, I think a child's palate and what they're is developed obviously in the womb. You know, what the parents have eaten prior to conception, what the mother is eating during conception, especially through breastfeeding, what signatures are getting released through the breast milk from the foods that she's eating as well. Sometimes a fussy child is only because they've got fussy parents, you know. Not all the time. It's not a blanket statement. But if you have a fussy child, perhaps look at the belief system that you have around food. And, you know, I like to use the word adventure and invitation, as you've probably heard me use on this chat so far. I like to invite people to explore the adventure of everything. You know, don't see it as a chore. See it as an adventure. Adventures are fun. You don't know you don't know what's going to happen on the adventure, you know, and an invitation to look at your diet or anything that we've spoken about today. An invitation gives the power to the person that gets to choose yes or no to that invitation. So when we invite people to go on to an adventure, it empowers them to make the choice, which is why I never like to use the word "you should do this," or you know, like, because you're already disempowering somebody. You should change your diet. You should be walking out in nature. No, fuck you! You don't tell me what I should be doing. You know, I get to choose what I want to do. You know, so sometimes even with children, you should eat your vegetables. I don't want to be eating vegetables, Dad. I want to eat the meat. If only I had have known what I know now, you know, relax, leave the veggies, just focus on the meat. Veggies, you'll come around one day.
Yeah. So we have to ask a couple of really fun sort of rapid fire kind of questions to quickly wrap this up, if that's okay. So just first thing that comes to mind, what would be your go-to comfort food of all things that you like?
Comfort food. Wow, that's a big one. Wow, rapid fire. I would say sausages. Okay. Sausages cooked over the grill. Yeah, fat, protein, like just juicy.
What's your favorite ingredient to cook with?
Wow. I really love to cook offal. I really do. Organ meats. I love it.
Wow, that's interesting.
Really?
I love that.
Yeah.
Wow.
You don't the British call them sweetbreads? It's like, what an idiotic name, but
I know, you know, all of them. You ask any chef, they love to cook the organ meats.
What about the most underrated vegetable?
Wow, that's a big one. That underrated vegetable. You call them sunchokes. We call them Jerusalem artichokes. Absolutely. You roast them in some duck fat. Game changer. Full of prebiotics. They make you fart. They can make you fart.
I have to look that one up.
Yeah, especially in duck fat. I love duck, but we used to hunt duck and wild duck because of, you know, there a lot of times they're eating just rotten grass. Boy, that meat was awful and very tough.
What about some basic dish that you think parents should teach their kids to make that's pretty easy starting point, get them into cooking?
I would invite them into a simple cooked piece of fish. Just grilled fish with some lemons, fresh herbs, good quality organic grass-fed butter if you choose to use dairy, and if not, just some good quality extra virgin olive oil. Full stop. Just
perfect.
Wonderful.
Get them to love fish and seafood.
Yeah, truly, that is
absolutely.
Highly underrated and very important. Pete, thank you so much for sharing your insights and experiences. We truly are thankful to have you on the show and for you to get up so early
Yeah,
on your
exactly.
time and be here. And our listeners, I think, are going to really love this and excited to have them pick up your book too, Healthy Food for Healthy Kids, right? Pretty much.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Any last words of wisdom, or have you pretty much kind of, I don't know. I think we've covered everything.
Well, yeah, we could also talk for another 2 hours, but that's another story.
Yeah.
So.
Happy to come back on another time, but thank you so much. I've loved this conversation. Love to you both, and love to everybody that's watching or listening, and hopefully we'll get to chat again one day. Thank you.
Absolutely. We'll link all those in our show notes, and hopefully everyone stays up to date on your latest projects and recipes. And remember, everybody, please incorporate your healthy and delicious meals into your family's routine, and it can make a really difference in just your overall well-being. Stay tuned for more enlightening conversations on BS Free MD.
You.